Hey everybody, welcome back to the Canopreneur Partners Canna News Break. Big news out of Washington earlier this week. Probably one of the last people that the marijuana or cannabis industry expected to come to their side and kind of speak out against the federal government was Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, considered by many one of the more quote-unquote conservative judges on the Supreme Court. Reagan appointee back in the 80s, has been on the court now for 40 years. There was a case called the Reich case in which a Colorado dispensary sued the federal government in order to deduct business deductions. It's called 280E taxation. So since cannabis is illegal federally, cannabis companies pay their federal taxes on their revenues, not their net income, like every other legal business in the United States does. The reason for this is because while it may be legal on the state level, the federal government says it's still illegal, but we're just going to ignore what the states are doing. But because we have it illegal, we're going to tax you at these exorbitant, extort you at these exorbitant rates is a better way to put it. That case went to the Supreme Court. They eventually lost before the Supreme Court. But what was interesting was what Justice Thomas said. He said, once comprehensive, the federal government's current approach is a half-in, half-out regime that simultaneously tolerates and forbids local use of cannabis. This contradictory and unstable state of affairs strains basic principles of federalism and conceals traps for the unwary, he said, adding that though federal law still flatly forbids the interstate possession, cultivation, or distribution of marijuana, the government, post-Reich, has sent mixed signals on its views. Given all these developments, one can certainly understand why an ordinary person might think the federal government has retreated from its once absolute ban on marijuana, he wrote. One can also perhaps understand why business owners in Colorado may think that their interstate marijuana operation will be treated like any other enterprise that is legal under state law. That's an important point. Every other business in the United States that is legal under state law is afforded interstate commerce, except for the cannabis industry. Thomas went on to say, if the government is now content to allow states to act as laboratories and try novel social and economic experiments, then it might no longer have the authority to intrude on the state's core police powers, to define criminal law and protect the health, safety, and welfare of their citizens. So what Thomas is saying is the federal government is willing to just let the states do what they want. That is an absolute violation of federal law. Then isn't the federal government then just handing all the powers to control the people or tax the people or the welfare of the people? Aren't they just handing it to the states? And if they hand it to the states, do they at some point have the right then to take it back? It's a fascinating decision, a fascinating comment. Basically, what Clarence Thomas is telling the federal government is your marijuana policy is wrong, it's weakening your position for enforce it, and you need to fix it. And if you're going to let the states do what they have to do, you ought to allow the businesses in those states the same protections and the same business operation environment that you allow every other legal business in that state. Further, what happens when two states decide to allow interstate commerce between two states? Does the federal government at that point in time have the right to say, no, New York, no, Massachusetts, you can't let cannabis go across your state lines? The states can look at them and say, wait a minute. This cannabis is legal. It's going from one legal state to another. You can't stop us. You've given us the right to regulate commerce how we want. You no longer have the right to tell us we can't do it. That's the situation Thomas is worried about, is now the states and the federal government going toe-to-toe on cannabis. So the federal government's position on cannabis, I don't think anyone would disagree. It's completely ridiculous, contradictory, and it just defies any logic whatsoever. That being said, nationalization, legalization on a national level is happening anyway. Whether the federal government does something, does nothing, it is happening anyway. Virginia at midnight last night just became another state that legalized cannabis. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island any day down the Northeast. The East Coast is legalizing cannabis despite what the federal government's going to do. We will get to a tipping point where too many states are legal. The states are going to start making their own laws regarding interstate commerce of cannabis. At that point, we have a showdown with the federal government. And what Thomas is basically saying is, you've allowed it. You can't go back. You're going to lose. So keep a look on this. But when the Supreme Court weighs in on something like cannabis reform, that tends to get people moving. Schumer has still proven rather incompetent at bringing anything to the floor, despite, saying all last summer leading up to the election, post-election, and post-inauguration in January it was a top priority. He's proven completely incompetent and unable to bring any vote or anything to the Senate regarding anything of legalization of cannabis. So we'll see what happens. We have another set of elections coming this fall. Who knows what happens then, but that's where we are today. Thanks and have a great day.